Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:06. It's O'Connor and Company here on this first Friday of the new year. And it's a busy one coming up later in this program. Right when we need them most, we have guests joining us in 30 minutes. TUMAY Harding. She's running for Senate out in Loudoun County State Senate in that special election next week. 7:05, Michael Waller, who is very critical of how the CIA and the FBI does their business, and we've got a lot of questions for him, as you just heard. 7:35, Bram Weinstein on the Commanders' final game of the season. 8:05, Jenny Terror, that New York Post reporter who just wandered through the terrorist suspect's home unaccompanied. And then at 8:35, Matt Foldy covering politics on Capitol Hill as we have the Speaker's vote coming up at noon today when the new Congress takes over. It's Larry O'Connor. Speaking of taking over, Patrice, Onwuka, why don't you just take over here?
Well, I'm in heaven, Larry.
Are you? Oh, because of the music?
Yes, it's one of my favorite Mariah Carey songs. But yeah, and a happy Friday, everybody. We made it to the first Friday of 2020.
Thank you.
2025.
2025. Oh, look at you. You're already still putting the old year on your checks as you write them. We apologize to everyone listening on the podcast who don't get the benefit of listening to the music, but it was a fine Mariah Carey jam we were just coming in with.
Fantasy.
All right, let's move on to the Las Vegas terror attack.
Yes.
And Patrice, I just want to set this up. This is not the guy I was 15 years ago, the guy that's constantly challenging law enforcement when they tell us something. Constantly scrutinizing what the Justice Department and the FBI says because I don't believe the initial statement that they give us. You know, not believing what respected legacy media reporters and journalists, well respected with a pedigree and a lifelong service here in Washington, D.C., report to me is the news and report to me are the facts. This is not the guy I was 15 years ago. But you know what? It's not my fault. Okay? It's not my fault that we can't believe what journalists tell us anymore because we've caught them in so many lies that they willfully told when they knew otherwise, but they told for their own personal or political purposes. It's not our fault that when the FBI delivers information to us as if it's fact, and then we find out afterwards that it wasn't fact. In fact, it was all a smokescreen and camouflage and some sort of distraction from what the reality was in our lives. And that's happened over and over and over again for either incompetence or political purposes. And when I say the FBI, if your brother-in-law is an agent in Des Moines, I'm not talking about them. You know what we're talking about here. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be that guy. I wish I weren't that guy. But frankly, at this point, if you believe what corporate journalists are telling you and what the FBI is telling you, first off, I think there's something wrong with you. Let's face it. If we believed everything that the FBI told us at the very beginning, then we would think that this was not a terror attack because that's what the FBI
was the very first
told
message,
us, right?
I mean, listen, it's so funny when you think about art and life, right? The Oscar Wilde quote, life often imitates art more than art imitates life. But when we watch movies where there's a government conspiracy and they lie to us about some terrorist attack, it's covered up, some hero saves the day, but you will never know because there's a cover story that comes up with it. And we separate that because we say, okay, that's the movies, that's a television show, that's the imagination of some producer and writer. Whereas now, we're in a place where we don't separate the two. We don't separate the idea that if the federal government is telling us that, no, those flying objects in the sky are not, we don't know what they are,
right.
but you're safe. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
We don't trust that anymore.
We have no idea what they are, but we know they're not a threat.
Exactly. Well, how do we know? Because the trust in our institutions, and I think when we think about the trust undermined in institutions, we think about some of the other, like the NIH because of COVID or other things. But it's in the institutions that are set up to do the most basic principle of federal government, which is to protect us, to protect our borders and to protect us internally. And if we can't trust what they're telling us, and even have a good belief that they're motivation
Yeah,
is right. Is to really
heart's in the right
the
place,
heart's
but
in
they
the right
just got it
place.
wrong.
Either way,
Nope.
neither one, and that's the sad place where we're at. And I don't know how you fix that. Kash Patel will try.
I agree
with
you. The only quarrel I have with what you said is I don't believe our government's primary responsibility is to keep us safe. I think their primary responsibility is to keep our freedoms safe, to protect us from our freedoms being violated. Now, sometimes that comes in the form of a foreign attack or something, but ultimately our freedoms are what need to be protected. And again, I bring you back to the FBI, who relied on the Steele dossier to violate individual civil rights. They lied on a FISA warrant so they could spy on an innocent man, Carter Page, for their own political purposes because they didn't like Donald Trump and they wanted an insurance policy against his presidency. They violated our rights. They violated our Constitution. No one's ever paid the price for it. I tell you all of that as a foundation to explain to you that we've learned quite a bit about Daniel Livelsberger, who is the alleged suspect or the suspect in the terror attack in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas.
In the Cybertruck.
I'm trying to come up with the right word to describe who he is because it is a suspected. They still won't say that it was a terror attack.
Interesting.
We're learning a lot about him, and I got to tell you right now, I don't buy half of what we're hearing. Suddenly, we're hearing now. This guy was a veteran of the Army, Green Beret, special forces guy.
Yes.
And so. And people who understand, he was a master sergeant, by the way, just recently promoted to, which I believe is E7. We were told that because he's Green Beret Special Forces, we heard from experts on media yesterday saying he had to have a working knowledge of explosives and how to, do up a car bomb like this if he had to, and yet he used fireworks. To create a show of some sort. His body is burned beyond recognition.
Yes.
Which is always an interesting element. When a body is burned beyond recognition, it means by definition you can't be sure that that body belongs to. Right. And he blew himself up in a Cybertruck. But before the bomb was detonated in the truck, we are told that he actually died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head with a .50 caliber handgun. Now, if you just wired the truck to blow up,
50 caliber, okay.
Why would you shoot yourself first? Number one, because if you really want this thing to blow up, wouldn't you want to ensure that it happened? Because it could have gone wrong, and now all you are is a suicide. Number one. Number two, 50 caliber. You know where I'm going with this. It blew his head into pieces.
Yes.
And there's no way to do dental records.
So
I'm just saying.
From what I understand, they were able to identify him by his ID and his passport.
That happened to be in the car.
Well, and I mean, are they made of like the material of the outside of the Tesla truck? I mean, if his body is that burned,
but the IDs weren't.
But the IDs weren't. That is suspicious.
And again, I'm just saying all of this because I hate being this guy. And I want to believe that this was just a lone man who had some marital troubles and he was upset. We're learning now that he was a Rambo type and that he loved Trump. No, he was a huge fan of Trump. So why did he target the Trump Hotel as the target for this last act of suicide? Here's a little bit more. Law enforcement in Las Vegas delivered some more information.
So through extensive surveillance video,
hold on. We'll get to Sorry, we're up against traffic here. I'm so sorry. I know I sound crazy.
It's suspicious. A lot of this is suspicious.
Body burned beyond recognition, shot in the head with a .50 caliber, so you can't get dental records. The only way of IDing the body is from the identification.
That was pristine.
It's 6:15. WMAL traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes, first on the fives. Jamie Whitten.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So through extensive surveillance video, we were able to track him leaving there, and we know that he went to several different places along Las Vegas Boulevard, and he spent some time in a parking lot of a business near Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. We then have a video of the truck pulling back onto Las Vegas Boulevard from the sands. You see that there. That's north on the boulevard from Sands at 8:39, where he then immediately heads to the Trump Hotel, pulls into the valet area, and as, of course, you all know, the explosion occurs within 17 seconds of his arrival at the valet. There's some additional investigative updates.
All right, so he drives up to the valet at the Trump Hotel in the Cybertruck. It's loaded with explosives and gasoline, and we're talking these camper tanks full of combustible fuel.
Yes.
He drives up. Within 17 seconds, he shoots himself in the face with a .50 caliber handgun, and the truck detonates. Body is burned beyond recognition. No dental records, but his ID is still left enough intact that they could actually identify him. Mr. Littleberger, we're told, was 100% patriotic, that posted America-loving content on his Facebook. He loved Trump. He was a very patriotic soldier, a patriotic American, according to his uncle. It's one of the reasons he was in Special Forces for so many years. It wasn't just one tour of duty. His uncle, by the way, also an Air Force veteran who served in Vietnam. We also see that his wife or ex-girlfriend, there are videos that are posted of a woman that he was associated with in a romantic relationship, was very anti-Trump. And had a lot of anti-Trump posts on social media. His uncle also suggested that with his skills, he could have fashioned a bomb that would have obliterated half of that hotel if he seriously wanted to hurt others.
That's what I would think.
Instead, only 7 people were injured with minor scrapes.
Here's what. Okay, so a lot of the things you've already laid out make me very suspicious. This is what makes me feel like the FBI should not be saying that these attacks are unrelated or that either of them were lone attacks. His truck blew up a few hours after we know about the New Orleans attack, killing 15 people. Right.
Right.
This guy was an Army veteran who was posted at the same base. Both of these gentlemen were posted, I'm using the word gentleman very loosely, but were posted at the same base. They also served in Afghanistan around the same time. And they both rented their vehicles through the same car share service, Turo.
Right.
Now, how many people, I've heard of Turo, I've never used it, but how many people know about Turo to use it?
It is not it's not like Avis or Hertz or Dollar or something like that.
It's not like
it's
a
not
traditional
even
rental.
I know.
And I don't
well,
think
maybe it's popular in the
Army.
Can. Maybe it's a popular thing within the Army personnel. I honestly don't know. I'm speculating.
I just feel like there are so many weird connections.
Right. What I like to describe here is there are obvious, undeniable connections between these two suspects, these two terrorists that committed horrific crimes involving trucks, electric trucks. The F-150 in New Orleans, I'm told, is also the electric version of the F-150, rented from the same place on the same day. There are connections between the two, but that does not necessarily mean the crimes themselves are connected. But it's undeniable that these two had connections.
You wonder.
And you right.
It does make you wonder.
So I don't know what to tell you other than the more we learn about this guy and this stuff, because on the face of it, you rent a Cybertruck. You deliberately get a Cybertruck. You do a suicide bombing using that Cybertruck in front of the Trump International Hotel. There's no way you can tell me that wasn't done for some level of political statement. The combination of Elon Musk
and Trump. Do you think he was trying to target Trump or just make it? Because obviously Trump was very unlikely to be there.
No, I don't think it was meant to target Trump. I think to me, the political aspect or the political statement is the imagery and the connection between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And yet we're told that this guy loved Trump. If you love Trump, why are you killing yourself and blowing yourself up in front of one of his properties?
Listen, we watch the same great movies. CIA, FBI, undercover operations, you tie up loose ends. I don't know, but I feel like I've seen this kind of plot line where the loose end is put in a vehicle, a body is put in the vehicle and exploded with some planted identification so that you think, oh, this is the guy, or I hate my mind goes there.
I told you I don't want to be this guy either. But if you if you told me that this is just a man who was having mental problems and he was disturbed emotionally and he killed himself and he went out with a bang, if I may say, shooting himself in the mouth with a .50 caliber gun and then his body burning beyond recognition, that could 100% be true. If you also told me that somebody was trying to fake their own death and get out of the country and leave forever, and the way they did it was having a body that is completely unrecognizable because of a gunshot wound to the mouth with dental records completely obliterated and the body burned beyond recognition, and yet an ID happened to remain unscathed, and this is really just a way to stage your death so you can leave the country for the rest of your life. This would also fit the pattern.
I mean, our minds can go in so many different places.
Maybe we watch too many movies, and maybe we should just sit back and say law enforcement has this in hand, and they would never lie to us, and I'm sure what they're telling us is the truth.
I actually think this is an example of art mimicking life.
Maybe. And maybe this is also one of the casualties when we do catch these authorities and these respected media brands and other people in blatant lies and falsehoods. When they tell the little lies like they have, and some of those little lies grew up to be very big lies. What did your mom always say? If you lie about stealing the cookie, then you'll lie about robbing a bank. At least my mom used to tell me that. Those little lies start to add up, and eventually you've lost our trust. And so when we see a story like this...
Bingo.
It's like wearing masks. You know, nobody wear a mask. It won't do any good. Everyone has to wear a mask. In fact, we won't let you into this place if you don't wear a mask. And then years later, you find out, oh, yeah, the mask didn't really do anything. You lie about stuff like that, and there's no reason for us to trust you again. It's 6:24. All right. Two things we have in common here with these two suspects is they were both in the United States Army. They both did horrific things. They were both either criminals that concealed their true intentions and true identities from their superior officers and from the people who worked with them, or they were both mentally disturbed, possibly both. And that shines a light on a very real problem that we've got in our military that needs more attention, not Lloyd Austin trying to drum out white nationalists from the Army. No, let's look at the men who are serving and see if we can help them out so this sort of thing doesn't happen. So we've got that. But again, I just want to go back to one other thing, because all of the eyewitness accounts of who Mr. Livelsberger, the person who died in Las Vegas, apparently, is he understood on a professional level explosives. He 18 years in Special Forces as a Green Beret, and yet he used amateur devices and amateur consumer grade stuff to make his bomb. Meanwhile, the guy in New Orleans is he's an HR guy in the Army. He's not Green Beret. He's not Special Forces. He's HR, and yet he had professional grade chemicals. He made chemical IEDs, not the amateur stuff that Livelsberger did, and he had those IEDs poised and ready to go as if he had professional help or professional expertise. It makes no sense.
I mean, it's interesting. The New Orleans guy, was at Deloitte. He's worked in a lot of different interesting high-profile companies.
Desk jobs.
But desk jobs.
He's like a white-collar guy.
Specialist. So it makes you wonder about these. I mean, can I just throw in there that maybe there's an international espionage or international terrorist. There's some angle that we're missing that we've probably seen in a movie, and I'm not going to dismiss it until you tell me otherwise. I'm not taking my tinfoil hat off. I'm not.
Could we get Tom Clancy's dead? Darn it! I was trying to get some expert. Maybe Brad Thor will join us on it. All right. Coming up, we're going to focus on the election for state senate in Loudoun County. TUMAY Harding joins us.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
WMAL. News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. Thanks for tuning in here this Friday morning. At 7:05, Michael Waller will join us. He's critical of how the CIA and FBI have sort of, changed their focus over the years. 7:35, Bram Weinstein on the Commanders' final game of the season. 8:05, Jenny Terres, that New York Post reporter who just gave herself a tour of the terrorist home because it was wide open. And at 8:35, Matt Foldy, editor-in-chief of DC Reporter, to let us know what's going to happen with the House vote today for Speaker. Patrice Onwuka, you've taken your tinfoil hat off.
I did. It was messing up my curls.
I
so,
appreciate
I
it.
did, but I will happily put it back on once we speak with
Mike Waller. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, you made it work, especially because I appreciate the hat match to the shoes, which is nice. Tinfoil shoes or something else. Joining us right now, TUMAY Harding. She is the Republican nominee for state Senate in Virginia's 32nd District, basically Loudoun County. That's an open seat that had been held by a Democrat. Now it's open. And TUMAY, boy, I got to tell you, it's very rare that voters know for a fact that they're voting for a state Senate seat that will determine the balance of power in the state Senate. This is a critical election on Tuesday.
That's for sure. I mean, honestly, after our victory with President Trump winning the election, I think this is the next big thing.
Yeah.
There's so much at stake, and we've been handed a gift here with the special election. And honestly, I've been working so hard. So is my team, and we've been knocking on doors, making phone calls, having that meeting with the communities. Larry and Patrice, that has been the most humbling, beautiful experience of my life, next to having my family, of course, and, visiting the temples, the Sikh temple, the Hindu temple, the mosques, and people just opening their homes to me and with dinner just to have a conversation. So it's been an amazing experience.
Well, it's been a very short window for you, too. So thankfully, you did run for county supervisor. So, a lot of the voters already know you, and I think that they know that you're earnestly positioning yourself to do the people's work. I got to ask you something. I hate to draw attention to your opponent here, but I am so confused. One of the big issues for parents in Loudoun County has to do with the scandal in the Loudoun County Public Schools having to do with some tragic overdoses of students, and the schools and the school system deliberately did not notify parents that there had been an overdose and that there was this kind of drug use going on with some of the students. Parents were outraged. So new rules have been in place with a 24-hour notification. Your opponent, the Democrat, says that he is in favor of that. But then I look at his voting record, and when he had a chance to vote for this down in Richmond, he actually voted against it. So can you explain this to me? Because I don't get it.
Well, to me, it sounds like he's a liar, but
okay, that's an explanation. All right, I'll take that.
No, but to your point, he voted against the 24-hour notice bill in the House. He doesn't want parents to have a place in their child's schools, and he also doesn't want parents to have these important, critical conversations at home to say, hey, I heard that there's this problem at school. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about steps how we can keep you safe. So not only does he want to separate the children from their families and parents, but he thinks the government owns the children and not them. And, I'm here to say no thank you. I'm here to say the people that I'm representing are livid, and they know that these are their children that they are raising in their culture and with their own beliefs, and they realize that it's at jeopardy.
So TUMAY, I mean, one of the issues that I'm sure you heard coming when you were knocking doors is really just the affordability right now. Families are struggling, and your opponent, both of you guys seem to support eliminating the car tax, which I know is very popular. But he says he's only going to support it if you can replace it with new revenue. What are you thinking about when you think about what can the state legislature do to really provide some financial economic relief to Virginians?
Again, I stand firm with eliminating the car tax. I think, let's think about it. Here in Virginia, we purchase a car and we pay thousands of dollars in taxes on the car. And then every 6 months, we're punished over and over again. I've used the example of one of my voters who said to me, I bought this car for my son for college, but we drove it to Colorado. Those tires don't even touch the ground in Virginia. Why am I paying these taxes? So definitely, I think that is a sore point for a lot of people here in our district. And I think that, to your point, we need to be able to afford housing, gas to put in our cars, and food on the table.
Yeah, to say the least. TUMAY Harding is our guest. She's a Republican nominee for the open Senate seat now in Loudoun County. And, you said something there about this issue with regard to notifying parents. There's a drug overdose in the school, and the school system deliberately does not tell the parents about it. If the parents knew about it, they could open up a conversation with their kids. Did you know this kid? Are you all right? This is tragic. Children shouldn't die. Tell me, have you been exposed to drugs or any of your friends? This is how we as a community of parents are able to fix the problems of our society. But you said something there, Tumay, that your opponent, the Democrat, and frankly his party, they don't think in those terms of parents being the solution. They don't think in those terms of parents having not just the right, but the ultimate responsibility over their children. They really think they know best, that the school system knows best, the educators know best, the government knows best. And that is so fundamental to this election and to what you bring to the table. So I so appreciate you saying that, and I'll just throw it your way so you can give the voters their closing argument here, because this election is this Tuesday, and it's huge.
That's right. And, and on top of what you just mentioned, keeping the boys out of girls' sports and spaces, so critically important. We raise our daughters, with an air of caution, unfortunately, and our boys, actually. But if they have that gut instinct that they're uncomfortable, they're being told right now, no, the problem is you and not the situation when they're asked to share their spaces and their modesty is taken away. But to your point also, one of the things I definitely want to stress, go out and vote now. Go out and vote today. The Leesburg, Loudoun County Office of Elections is open 8:30 to 5 p.m. We're expecting a snowstorm on Monday night. So I don't want there to be any excuses for anybody, because this is your vote. Don't waste it. We also have a rally with the governor on Saturday at Freedom High School at 1:30. Arrive a little early. You can RSVP on my social media. But it's going to be so much fun. We have a whole lineup of other guests. We're going to vote, and then we're going to move over to Dulles South Rec Center and go vote there. So we have momentum, so let's go win.
That is a great way to spend your Saturday afternoon, everybody. All right, Loudoun County, 1:30 p.m., Freedom High School Auditorium. Hang out with Tumay Harding and hang out with Governor Glenn Youngkin. And then you can go at 3 o'clock en masse to vote at Dulles South. What you want to do is RSVP for that at TUMAY4VA.com. That's TUMAY for VA.com. Tumay, good luck at the election. We look forward to talking to you as the senator-elect.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
6:45. Yesterday was the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, one day delayed because of the terror attacks on Bourbon Street. And some remarkable things happened there at the Superdome. First of all, one of the most remarkable things, I think I'm turning into temporarily a Notre Dame fan.
Really?
I don't like Notre Dame football. Oh, see, now you're pushing it. See, that triggers me. Well, I'm a Michigan football fan.
Yes, I know that.
And Michigan
know that.
is a huge rival of Notre Dame's. I'm also a Navy football fan. Navy plays Notre Dame every year. Notre Dame pretty much always trounces Navy. So Notre Dame is always the rival, right?
Okay.
But of the teams left over, I got to think I got to pick them, right? And maybe Penn State. Well, we'll figure it out. Anyway, my personal college football concerns aside, some other remarkable things happened at the game. Most remarkably, how ESPN covered it, or for that matter, didn't cover it. Think about it. You're ESPN. All eyes in the nation are on this game because there's no other game being played. It was delayed by a day. It's a hugely important game for the college football playoffs. It's got two high-profile teams, Notre Dame and Georgia, and it's coming on the heels of this terror attack, which is a crime against our nation.
Yes.
This hugely momentous moment. And listen to what it sounded like in the stands or in the stadium itself as they were preparing for the national anthem. Forgive me, it wasn't as they were preparing for the, obviously, as you heard, it was in the final notes of the national anthem, and then you heard that entire crowd in the Superdome chanting, USA, USA, USA. That was amazing. It was stirring. It was emotional. It was patriotic. ESPN didn't cover it.
They cut away for commentary.
Yeah. They never showed the national anthem or the crowd reaction. They didn't show the moment of silence and prayer for those who had lost their lives and the families left over. ESPN didn't show any of that, any of the emotion, any of the bonding of the people in that stadium who set aside the football game for a moment and focused on what was most important. ESPN ignored all of it.
And it is not as though they didn't know this was going to happen. They, obviously, somebody at ESPN knew the exact rundown, and most importantly, that moment of silence. They were more than happy to cover the kneeling during the anthem that we saw around, what's his name?
Colin Kaepernick.
And all of that. They were more than happy to cover that.
All the divisive stuff.
Exactly. But the unifying, pro-America stuff is not what they cover. And this is, unfortunately, folks, some residue of DEI, some residue of wokeism still in a lot of these corporate media and in big corporations. And that is why they chose not to. I mean, if that was, obviously they had a split screen in the back of that they could have literally just cut away to and say, wow, this is an important moment. Let's show it to you.
This was a deliberate act. So
it tells you what they believe in.
Speaking of corporate tone deafness or missteps, to be generous, the Sugar Bowl was brought to you by Allstate, one of the main sponsors of college football. You always see the field goal, they have a big net to catch the ball with the two hands, the Allstate hands, right? You're in good hands. The CEO and president of Allstate Insurance delivered a 30-second message as the named sponsor of the Sugar Bowl, and the message, well, let's just say it didn't go over very well. Take a listen.
Welcome to the Allstate Sugar Bowl. Wednesday, tragedy struck the New Orleans community. Our prayers are with the victims and their families. We also need to be stronger together by overcoming an addiction to divisiveness and negativity. Join Allstate working in local communities all across America to amplify the positive, increase trust, and accept people's imperfections and differences. Together, we win.
What?
What was that?
What was the tragedy? Somebody had E. coli in their jambalaya? I mean,
the tragedy was a terror attack of a person who was inspired by radical Islamic jihadists who wanted to kill Christians and Americans and any non-believers. What does that got to do with being addicted to divisiveness and negativity and accepting people's imperfections and differences? We're supposed to accept the jihadist? Are we supposed to? What is he saying?
We are not going to accept people who hate us and an orthodoxy that calls for us to be annihilated. We're not going to accept that. We're going to call it out and we're going to reject it. What we will unify around is what was chanted in the stadium.
That's right.
USA. And love for country. But you know what, folks? I just said it. DEI, wokeism, that residue. That speech was written by a DEI professional at Allstate who deserves to be fired.
100% from an HR executive. That sounds exactly like HR training. Who is he lecturing? Is he lecturing the terrorists? Hey, ISIS, you should accept people's imperfections. You know, that imperfection that they believe in Jesus Christ? You know, accept that. Is that who he's lecturing? Or he's lecturing us? We're supposed to accept the imperfections of murderers. What? Why would you even do that? So you got to think about the millions of dollars that Allstate spent to sponsor this. And in that 30-second message,
that's how they spent it.
Tom Wilson, chairman, president, and chief executive officer, probably repelled customers from Allstate. It's unbelievable.
Clay Travis on Twitter said, you know what? They may get Bud Lighted, which we now know is a term for, what do you call it? Not shopping at a particular, boycotting, thank you, a particular brand.
Choosing, because let's face it, whatever Allstate does for you, State Farm can do for you, Prudential can do for you, the people who've got the EMU, Liberty, those guys, they can all do pretty much the same
and
thing.
Frankly, it's a good time to call them and say, you know what, I could get a better deal.
That's right.
And by the way, I hated what your CEO said. I love America, and Allstate should love America enough to make that. Why? Let's call. Actually, I think our family has Allstate for some of our stuff. Maybe I'm going to give them a call today and at least just tell them how upset I am. They need to know how upset we are, not just on social media.
654.
Making sense of your world.
Talk radio is where I get all of my information.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.